All right, let's get going. It's the first panel of the day. Thank you all for joining. Leading with Purpose and Empathy, Marketing During a Crisis. I think we are all learning fast on how to do this, and we're going to have a great discussion about that here right now. We have an amazing group of marketing leaders with us here today, and I want to introduce them and then jump right into the conversation. We've got 4 all-stars with us. We have Matt Lieberman here joining us from PwC. We've got Carla Hassan from Citi, Naveen Agarwal from Prudential, and Lina Shields from Eli Lilly. So thank you to all of you for participating in this panel today. As we look at what's going on, I want to just jump in and warm you guys up with a couple questions, and then we'll dig into some specific areas. So let's start with the question that's really on everyone's mind right now. And I'd appreciate each of you could kind of give a brief story and example of how your marketing has shifted as a result of COVID-19. That's kind of the burning question right now for everyone is, how are you approaching your marketing and what has shifted in your marketing? So maybe I'll ask Naveen, do you want to give us your thoughts on that first, and we'll go around the horn?
Oh, thanks, Stephanie. Thank you. I think these are kind of very interesting times for our world, our country. And I think the whole notion about purpose, the authenticity of who we are, and the brand DNA, actually, you have to dig deep into it to figure out how you're going to market in this time. So if you think about kind of our story, we actually have a very eventful story. So Prudential is a 140-year-old brand. We generate about $60 billion in revenues, and our brand shows our age. And this April, first week of April, we were going to do a full redo of our brand globally. And we're going to launch this massive campaign, and we had bought a boatload of media to go out in April. On March 12th, on the marketing floor, we had our first COVID case. And by March 15th, we were all working from home. And suddenly we had to decide that our entire launch had to be stopped. So you can imagine you have bought millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of media, and you have to completely redo all that thinking. And by the way, the speed at which you have to move and the decisions that you have to make were unprecedented. So, I would say that it kind of was a story of a complete pivot in matter of days, not even weeks, in matter of days. And, we actually had to think about our business drivers and marketing connected to it. So if you think about it, we are a company that is supporting people. The market is going down by 1,000 points every day. People are calling us about their retirement accounts. We have to decide whether we want to sell life insurance or not sell life insurance. I mean, it's those kind of, important things. And by the way, we support some of the largest healthcare worker associations. So American Nursing Association is one of our primary clients. So you think about, well, in this time, how do you help them? Then we have board and legislators calling us saying, hey, would you actually be supporting all these communities in life insurance and not take that away? We have offices being asked to shut down when we are paying checks to over 22 million people in our country in terms of paychecks for older people. So the whole notion of marketing as a sales organization or customer-facing acquisition and engagement organization had to be completely pivoted into, I would say, a service-focused, customer-first organization. And we really had to kind of lean in and say, ROI is one thing. We also have to think about who our customers are, and whatever we can do right by them in time of need will enhance our brand going forward. So that's kind of our little story. And what I would say to you is that as the world has evolved from that point of time, really the shelf life of marketing, we were thinking in terms of when we put a campaign out, it's going to be a 3 to 6 month campaign. That's becoming primarily a 3 to 4 week cycle. Carla, I can see like Citi has done things like this where you are completely replacing your ads every 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and we're in a similar bucket. So just kind of the reframe of the whole narrative around strategy and continuum versus a consistent message. We have to rethink marketing in that context.
Right. You bring up 2 critical points that I want to hear from others on related to this. One, being helpful is what I'm hearing from you. It's like typically we're going out to drive sales, and you have to lead with driving in service right now to your customers. And I think that is a critical point. It's sort of the sales has to take the back seat. It would be tone deaf. You have to be in service and helping right now. And that's the way to be most relevant. I think that's a critical point. The other thing I think that's interesting that you hit on is just the need for speed and agility right now. Because, as marketers, we may have had 3 months, 6 months, 12-month plans, but they're all kind of out the window, and we're having to operate in a much more dynamic way. Carla, I'd love to hear from you on your experience with that right now as it relates to being in service to your customers and how you're pivoting and making these decisions so quickly.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, thank you for having me on this panel with everybody else. It's a real pleasure and an honor. Look, I think, let me start with what's not changing. And I think what's not changing is the need for brands to stay true to their values and to stay as authentic as possible and to really be driven by their purpose. And for me at Citi, that's not changing. But what has is exactly what Naveen has said, which is we have had to pivot very quickly. I'll give you one small example. So we have historically for the last probably 6, 7, maybe even 8 years been partners with Harlem Eat Up. It's an organization that does a great festival in Harlem every single year around April. And that wasn't going to happen. And so we had two choices. One is completely renegotiate and take ourselves out of Harlem, a community that we've been in it for a long time, or actually continue to stay true to our mission and be authentic to our value of wanting to be a part of the community. And went to the organizers of Harlem Meetup and said, hey, why don't World Central Kitchen is doing some amazing things, right? Because as COVID has hit, it's not just a health crisis, it's now become also a hunger crisis. How can we help? How can we help the community? And so we repurposed, sponsorship dollars, if you will, and actually had them go work in the community. And the beauty of that is that not only did it help the community in the sense that it serves people and people can eat and people won't go hungry, but it also kept restaurants in business. And so being a part of the community, because their workers were able to earn a wage and they were able to stay working, providing food for the community. And so it's ideas like that, and then by the way, our business jumped in as well. And the consumer business said, hold on a second, we've got this whole initiative around driving digital accounts. How can we also make the community piece a part of it? And so, what started off as a, small potentially idea ended up being a pretty massive idea that not only drove the community or good in the community, but also helped us drive business. So those two things coming together became really important, but we pivoted. And I think that's probably the biggest thing is the nimbleness and the pivot is really important. And I think that if we can, the title of this is Leading with Empathy. It's a word that I think is completely under leveraged. It's now kind of a word du jour, if you will, but for the longest time, actually, it was seen as a soft word. And for me, it's so important. And it's one of the most critical parts of how we think about not just leadership, but quite frankly, how we drive marketing and our marketing agenda. And I think if we continue to put ourselves in our customers, consumers, clients' shoes, we can pivot quickly. We've demonstrated that we've been able to pivot quickly in service of them, in service of the community and in service of the business. So we have so many ideas like that, but I will say, Naveen is right. We have really, we've had to force ourselves to be very fast and nimble. And I have to say, I'm on the one hand surprised and on the one hand super proud of the fact that we've been able to we've never put this much content out on our different channels. And so it's strange that a pandemic caused us to rethink how we do that. But the speed at which we're doing it, the efficiency at which we're doing it, and the quality with which we're seeing results back, I think is pretty fantastic.
It's fantastic. I look at it in terms of what you were saying in terms of the quality. I think we're all learning a lesson right now that, we had volumes and volumes of content, and this has forced us to all audit all of our content, frankly, put a lot of it on the shelf, and you can find out that your teams actually can create a smaller amount of more high quality, relevant and empathetic content, to your point. It's really powerful. I'd love to hear from Matthew and Lina and ask not just COVID-19, the pandemic, but also layering on it all of the racial injustice and inequality that is going on in the world, how are your companies addressing and dealing with that? Are they participating in the conversation? How are you approaching and thinking about that as another key thing that is weighing on every human right now? So maybe, Lina, could you say a few words about that? I think you're on mute.
Yes, don't we all do this like 25 times every day, I think, at least. Well, thank you for the question, and it's great to be on this panel with all of these great leaders. I, just very quickly want to, just say from a healthcare perspective, since we are a pharmaceutical company, obviously when COVID hit, it was a revolution for all of us from a work perspective. But at the same time, we felt like we had really a place to play in the pandemic in and of itself, being a science-based company. So the number one priority that we had at the beginning of the crisis was to keep our employees safe, first and foremost. So we actually started working from home way before the state actually started closing down, but also keep the supply of medicine. And I think that is, even from a marketing perspective, has been something that, we had to quickly shift to, because a lot of the medications that we make, we needed to continue the supply to happen, or otherwise, imagine if people needed insulin or able to get their insulin across the world, that would have added a significant layer on top of the pandemic. And so in terms of how our marketing has changed from a COVID perspective specifically, in a nutshell, it pretty much flipped everything on its head. And what I mean by that is that I think someone made the point, actually even at the beginning of the conference, that we're so used to drive messages and drive media as it relates, I think it was you, Stephanie, to sales and driving an ROI. So a lot of our meter of decision making was around where's my next best dollar and how do I drive revenue. And I think that went out of the window so quickly, because we very similarly kept the patient, in our case, at the center of everything we do. But the new thing for us was marketing and media messages actually became also responsibility, which is also tied to your question around the racial injustice at the current moment as well in the discourse. And what I mean by that with COVID is that, where we were placing our ads, actually we had to look at our portfolio and flip it in the way that, in two ways. One, life-saving medications became our number one promotional, so to speak, focus, meaning we weren't going to promote at that time medications that weren't necessarily life-saving. And secondly, I think the main thing was recognizing, and it was a place where marketing typically in pharma hadn't found themselves, which was, this may not be the right time to actually tell people, go talk to your doctor or ask your doctor. So overnight, the ecosystem in which we operate as a pharmaceutical company, our marketplace actually changed on us overnight, where people couldn't get into the doctor's office, or frankly, it was irresponsible of us to drive into the doctor's office because the doctor's office became not safe as the pandemic expanded. And so that caused us to really just focus on medications that were in the oncology space, where people were immunodepressed and really needed this medication, and we knew doctors would prescribe, and deprioritize, if not completely pausing, all the other advertisement. And then, as that progressed into also the situations that we're facing right now, obviously, Lilly as a company has been very active in the space prior to the current discourse and prior to the current events. We have currently announced also a significant financial commitment and 25,000 employee hours to fight racial inequality. But, aside from what the company is doing, I think as a marketer and as a marketing organization, my personal opinion is that when it comes to the discourse that we are finding ourselves in, and the evolution almost as marketing leader from COVID into the racial discourse right now, from a chronological perspective, I think the key thing for me has been is, one, we have to get used to the fact that our marketing dollars, frankly, our investment, are now also a statement. And they are being regarded as, where does your company stand, and why do you choose to advertise where you advertise? And it's a shift, and it's a new skill set almost that we have to courageously step into. And secondly, from my perspective, I see this through three lenses. You have to be authentic, you have to be specific, and then you have to have stamina. And what I mean by that is, we have done a lot of work internally to address very openly racial biases that we had internally, far from being done. But I think that allowed us a little bit of space to at least having already had the conversation, and we know it's an authentic one. But you have to be specific. I think we're going to see a lot of companies, including us, just donating a lot of money. And I think the specificity of what are we actually going to do with those donations, how are we changing things, is going to be important. But also the stamina. This is not a time in history. This is going to have to be sustained for years to come. So I think associating timing with the efforts is going to be important.
Amen on stamina. I think we all need more of that. I use the word just resilience, but I think we're speaking about the same thing here. We are all being taken to task and tested on that for sure right now. Matthew, I'd love to hear from you. Just again, how are you thinking about it? How is your company dealing with your marketing in light of the pandemic and the racial injustices that are happening? Share a little bit what you guys are up to.
So it's a great question, because going back to your initial points around purpose and agility, none of these crises can be looked at in isolation anymore, whether it's with a health pandemic, then moving into economic impact, and then moving obviously into racial injustices and other social issues. So one of the things that we're talking about from a marketing strategy perspective is not only living our purpose, which for us is building trust in society and solving important problems. And it's something that's, for the racial injustices, is very important to us. Our CEO has started an organization called the CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion a few years ago. And we have over 1,000 CEOs who have signed up to take a pledge to make changes in their organization. We unfortunately had a loss in the firm a couple of years ago in Dallas with one of our colleagues, Bojan. So this is something that was very near and dear to our hearts. And it was something that we always put in all of our marketing, which is people first. Not only our clients or customers, but our people as well, given that we have 55,000 of them in the US, making sure that they're safe and that they have the ability to work and be successful in serving our clients. And then from an agility perspective, we've done things similar to what some of the other speakers have been saying around really having to be agile, quick, and work in a totally new and different way. So from the day we first started discussing COVID until the day we launched it, in 2 weeks, we put out a CFO pulse survey, and it was something that we did bi-weekly on measuring all of the concerns, impacts, points of view around the CFO audience. How is this going to impact the financial community? And it filled a white space. And this is something that typically would have taken us 4 to 6 months to build a research panel and get out there and publish it and have a really strong point of view. In today's world, we didn't have that. We had just a matter of days or weeks. And the ability to centralize all of our marketing and sales teams and have them working so closely together on one singular message, one centralized approach, allowed us to be much more focused and to be able to get to market in a very new and different type of way.
Yeah, it's interesting for all of you. The steel thread here is around a form of speed and resilience through this, equally with relevance. It's amazing to see each one of you in one way or another has gone back and said, what are the things in my offerings that I need to put to the side? How can I be most relevant? And not just, and relevant requires empathy right now, because people are in pain and it's a time of crisis, and having an empathetic tone and voice in the way you're engaging. How do you guys feel your marketers are at doing that? I mean, it's probably a shift for some marketers out there. I'd love to hear from this group. One, how do you feel your marketing talent has adjusted to what needs to be done right now? I sense pretty good from you guys, but I'd love to hear a little more. And then comment specifically about how you think this post-pandemic is going to change the shape of the marketing organization in terms of the talent you need, the skills you need in the organization. And I'll just put it out there for whoever wants to kind of comment on that first.
I'm happy to go on that. I think one of the things that doesn't change, Stephanie, from what's going on is, and I feel like that's my theme. Let me start with what doesn't change and then tell you. But I really do think like marketers, we've always, right, and the best marketers have always started with consumer first or customer first, client first, whatever your business is, if you're B2B or B2C or whatever it is. And so I feel like the marketers that are thriving right now, at least on my team, are the ones that are actually putting those constituents first. And, empathy is, I mean, by definition, right, is the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and see kind of where they're coming from. And then, as a marketer, then you adjust for that. And it's been really interesting for us because what we saw at the very beginning is this real fear and real uncertainty. And so everyone was like, thank the people that are out there. But then very quickly, we started to see people say, or consumers say, hey, you know what? I'm not sure that just thanking me is okay. Like, what utility are you going to provide me? What are you going to do for me, right? And then we saw like the community and what are you doing for the community? And so, we're seeing those in waves. And I think the marketers that are thriving and that are going to thrive moving forward, right, as we look moving forward coming out of this, are those that are going to be able to pick up on those things really quickly, see the data, turn that into real insight, and then turn that into action. And I think that's where you're starting to see, like for me at least, it's been a pleasure to see some members of my team kind of where that has clicked with them. They're like, look, I saw this and this resulted in this. And now I have an idea for this. And then it comes to fruition and it actually impacts the business or it impacts reputation or it impacts whatever the KPIs are, for that time. And I really do think that's what we're gonna, like the more empathetic, and by empathy it doesn't mean kind or nice, it actually just means the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes to solve a problem for them. I think those are the marketers that can, when they use that in combination with being able to take a whole bunch of data that we all have right now, right, we've all got a ton of data, turn it into meaningful insight and then action very quickly. I think that's where you're going to see success moving forward, among other things, but that one piece for me becomes really important.
I think it gets back to what we've all known, but sometimes we lose sight of, which is, I hear you saying, in other words, but a customer first. And sometimes we're always balancing the tension of outside in, meaning listening to consumers, customers, prospects, versus inside out. What's the agenda of our company? What new product are we launching? Or what businesses do we want to grow? And sometimes those get out of balance where our agenda takes over and it's sort of, we're talking at our customers. And what I hear from you is, hey, you're signaling to your team, the answers are all with the customer. Listen, do deep listening, understand, and then you will be empathetic because you will have listened and more deeply understood them. Matthew, you had mentioned it at PwC, there is a complete refocusing in the company around the customer. That's a pretty straightforward strategy. You guys have always been pretty customer centric. What does that really mean in practice? What changes are you putting in place to be more customer centric right now?
So a number of things, and a lot of them are being significantly sped up as a result of these crises, but a couple specifically related to the comments that Carla was making as well, in terms of us being very focused on re-looking at our organization of marketing itself. So we're a very matrixed group, and we had various groups going out and doing marketing individually. And we had to get rid of that type of structure in this new world, given that we were doing a lot less, and we needed to maintain some level of control over this because, like others, we developed a tone of voice guide. We developed imagery, a whole design palette that would work and be empathetic to somebody who's reading it. So things as basic as making sure that we weren't using imagery of people working in conference rooms together during a time when we were sheltering in place. We also are taking a much more data-driven approach. Given the building of our MarTech stack, we had the ability to really focus on what that personalization will look like for our customers and to ensure that they are getting what they want, when they want, and where they want it. And really being much more focused on curation right now, because all of us can raise our hands about getting too many emails and too many reach outs and invites to too many webinars. And how do we get the right information in their hands that's going to be relevant to them? And that started with really having a very simplified philosophy from a business perspective for us, which was we looked at the crisis for COVID in 3 waves. The first around mobilization. So how do we help our clients do basic things like work remotely? Then we moved into stabilization, which is, okay, now we're going to start looking at things like return to work, and that's where we currently are now. And so how do we reopen up workplaces? How do we ensure that we have the right PPE equipment in place? And then thirdly, all around stabilization and moving into strategizing. And when we talk about strategizing, it's how do you emerge successfully from this crisis? Should you be looking at deals for new revenue streams, et cetera? So making sure that what we're saying is relevant specifically to the time. When I say time, we're talking day or week, not month or year.
Listening to you say that, it's like going back and taking a full audit and stock of all the different places of the customer interaction, from visually to inward. And I think all of us need to practice that truly on a daily basis. And again, my belief that sometimes we get out of balance between what we want to tell our customers versus what they truly need, and being empathetic and listening to them. I want to shift gears a little bit. Lina, I'll start by asking you, all of us have been forced pretty quickly to rethink our marketing mix and make some shifts in terms of our dollars and our spend. You've done a pretty big pivot, as you suggested. Some of the things you wanted to talk to the market about weren't appropriate right now, or weren't a priority. You've shifted a lot off TV and you've gone into digital. Without disclosing anything you can't, share with all your thousands of friends here, can you talk a little bit about how that's worked for you, that pretty big shift in your mix from going from TV to digital?
Yes, I think, first of all, we were in the midst of a pretty significant digital transformation, just marketing mix shift for sure. When I took over the team, we were about 84% television in the mix, and now we're getting much closer to a 50-50 mix. But more importantly, I think when we were trying to do the shift, I kept saying we're not ready to catch digital because we didn't have an infrastructure of data underpinned. We didn't have a good understanding of the tech requirements that we wanted to have. And so it's definitely been a journey. I think there's this joke going around marketers, in the industry in general, that the person that really drove the digital transformation was COVID-19. It wasn't the CDC, it wasn't CMO, it wasn't CEO, it was COVID-19 for all of us. And I think, it was a good way to pressure test what we had in mind. I think pharma has been always very traditionally, linear focus, acquisition driven, go to your doctor, and then just, blasting information. At the same time, when you are dealing with life-saving medications, when your product is something that ultimately will go inside the body of people, you also have a responsibility to provide that information. So our advertising is always a mix of, informing a patient so that they can have a conversation with their doctors with the pros and cons of the medication, as well as obviously a marketing effort. So I think the biggest shift was not just shifting the digital mix of the media placement from linear to digital. It was also creating this end-to-end journey and understanding both the tech and the data that we need in order to achieve that. We're no way close to be done, but we definitely, started with a prototype and we're well on our way. I think what COVID has done internally, it has accelerated those conversations, but more than anything, it has provided the team that was working on this just an ability to get to decisions very, very fast. Every time you have a digital transformation, a marketing transformation, you also have a very strong cultural transformation because things were working before. And so by definition, if you're in any of these jobs, you are facing resistance every day and you're facing love for the status quo, and your job is to shake that all up. So COVID in that sense helped because there was no status quo, and all of us, we were spending hours pivoting and repivoting plans that we thought we had the day before. And so I think the one thing that came out of it was the ability to make a decision quickly, in some situations directly with the CEO, which has been very helpful. I think the other piece of that is data, to Carla's point, also becomes very important, not just to translate into insights, but for us, because we pause so much in advertisement, we were able to create very clear triggers based on data to show when we meet this trigger, that's because of Carla's point, because our listening was on steroid of our customers and our patients and our doctors. We were able to say when these scientific data points are met, when states open up to this level, and when these data points around our consumers are met with very specific agreed upon triggers, that's when certain levels of advertising come up. And of course, the nimbleness of being able to reach our consumer digitally helped us then reinsert us in the conversation and in the advertising space at a gradual level, and so to start driving information before conversion.
Two great points that I think you made that I want to highlight. One is when I asked you about the shift in the mix, what you told me was I didn't just shift the mix, everything changed. The culture, the message, all of that. And I think that's a really key insight for everyone. It seems so obvious, but yet I have observed some people who just are trying to retrofit into digital. And you can see it doesn't work. I can tell you just our own story, the way we've taken our live events starting in March to now, every day are getting better and better because it's like the live setting versus the digital. So I really like that you've highlighted you can't just change the channel. When you can use the channel, you've got it's the total package here of the message, the visual, all of it. So I think that's a really key point. The other thing I hear from you is you are using the data to inform your decisions in terms of what's next and what are the key things that you need to do. Naveen, I know that's been a big thing for you. You guys have done a full court press on doing more to invest in technology, in data science, AI. Can you say a few words about how that's been helpful to you or not, but what the experience, how you're leveraging that right now with everything going on?
Yes, I think we actually, just to kind of give context here, we brought a team of data scientists. So for the whole company, the entire data sciences lives in marketing. So does our customer experience and technology. So I think if you tie it back, I think the new marketer, the modern marketer has to think about marketing job in an end-to-end context. And frankly, it goes back to at the company level when we are looking at the purpose of the company. Is the purpose primarily shareholder value? Or now we are thinking, especially when we're sitting on the board and the top 15 people in the company, our thinking is, while we are not ready to go all B Corp, we want to make sure we are thinking of not just shareholders as the primary motivator. I think it'll think broader. So if you put that lens, there are three parts to it. One is brand. Second is customer experience. And customer experience is a very big area which requires data sciences and technology, and marketers have to own the customer experience. It's really critical because customer experience drives what the customer feels, and that drives your brand and also drives your engagement and acquisition. So to me, if there are three parts to marketing, one is brand, second is customer experience, and third is acquisition. Unless you bring technology, and I think, Lina, when you made those points around digital transformation, you're sitting in the center of that. So we actually organizationally set ourselves up like that. And I'll say one more thing which is tied to that, which is when we step back and look at where we need to spend a lot more time is to understand our segments and be able to personalize things in a micro segment. Right? I mean, frankly, we didn't think about our customers as a segment of one. And while we couldn't do that before, now we can do that with technology. So how we create personalized journeys and understanding different people come to the same need with different thought process, how do we embed that into our forward thinking, by the way, and at the same time, actualize the purpose of the company. That blending has to be brought in. And by the way, when we go to our board, when we talk about notions like customer lifetime value, we have to dig into that brand lifetime value too. And brand value may accrue sometimes by now actually having financial dollars. And having a brand attribute that can reduce how we go to market. So it's a very interesting ecosystem that we have to balance going forward as marketers.
Congrats to you on that. And I think you touched upon the need that we all have been talking about, the importance of relevance and empathy, but how do you do that at scale? Everyone here on this line happens to run pretty big organizations, and how do you do that at hyperscale? And you have to be able to have the technology and the data and the insights to orchestrate that personalization. I think maybe Carla said it, I can't remember exactly, but that's what we focus on at Salesforce every day, and none of us would have ever wished a pandemic. But I will say, like, wow, way to create a fast path to digital transformation. I mean, this is a forcing function like no other. So we're going to wrap up here. I just want to do a closing lightning round with all of you. You just don't overthink it. If it comes to mind, what is your key ingredient to successful marketing moving forward? Matthew.
Continued upskilling of our people.
Okay, Naveen.
Authentic empathy.
Lina.
It is stamina for me.
That might be 2 votes. And Carla.
I think for me, purpose-driven and empathetic.
Awesome. You guys are a fabulous group. I really appreciate your time and all of your insights, and on with the show. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.